I am Natalie, 42 years old, the owner of a small tailor shop nestled in the middle of the main street of a quiet town in Ohio. Here, summer hums with cicadas, and everyone seems to think they have the right to comment on everything from the weather to coffee prices to the weight of their neighbors. I have lived my whole life with this plus-size body, and instead of apologizing for it, I choose to turn every seam, every stitch into a declaration. We don't need to shrink ourselves to fit someone else's mold. My shop is where lifeless bolts of fabric transform into gowns carrying dreams, wedding dresses, evening gowns, and this time a graduation dress for my daughter Zoe. Zoe had just turned 18 with sleek black hair and a smile that could brighten even the rainiest day. She is my greatest pride, smart, talented, and above all, unwilling to let anyone define her worth. The dress I made for her was a masterpiece, pristine white, with soft puff sleeves embroidered with silver beads that caught the light like 1,000 stars. It was more than clothing. It was a message you deserve to shine in your own way without needing anyone's permission. But there was one person who never wanted to see us happy. Elaine, my mother-in-law. She was a master of comparison, always bringing up her former daughter-in-law, slim, elegant as the measuring stick, and never hesitating to drop barbed comments about my appearance. Every word from her was like a needle prick, but I had learned to swallow it, until she made my daughter's big day her next target. And then, one morning, I walked into my sewing room and felt my heart drop to the floor. Before I continue, hit subscribe and let me know where you're listening from. This story isn't just about a dress, it's about standing up to cruelty and winning. I pushed open the sewing room door where Zoe's white dress had hung on the mannequin the night before. But instead of the familiar sparkle, what hit my eyes was chaos, chiffon, torn into strips, silver beads scattered across the floor like frozen tears. The air still carried the sharp scent of perfume I knew all too well, Elaine's perfume. I stepped forward slowly, my mind spinning, my heart pounding in my ears. Each step felt like I was crushing my own pain, the cold crunch of beads under my heels cutting through the silence. On the table among the shredded fabric lay a scrap of paper scrawled in the familiar slanted handwriting. No one wants to see that girl wearing this. It clings to her the way you make clothes for yourself. It was like someone had clamped a hand around my chest. This wasn't just the destruction of a dress. It was a slap in the face to my pride, my body, and my daughter. A numbness ran down my spine, followed quickly by a burning heat, shame mixed with fury. I pictured Elaine lips curling yesterday when she just happened to drop by the shop with a bag of old fabric, her eyes sweeping the room like she was measuring every corner. I'd felt uneasy then, but I never thought she'd actually do it. I clenched the note in my hand, my trembling no longer from shock, but from a resolve taking shape. If Elaine thought she could use cruelty and body shaming to destroy Zoe's day, she had miscalculated. And I was going to prove it. I wished this had been the first time Elaine had crossed the line, but the truth was far from it. The silence of the room seemed to give way to memories flooding back, each one another cut. Once, right before Zoe's big art exhibition, Elaine stopped by to help her prepare and accidentally spilled an entire jar of red paint on her portfolio. She chuckled lightly. Well, maybe she'll learn to be more careful. Mark just sighed at the time, saying his mother was clumsy. Then, on Zoe's birthday last year, I discovered the size label on the dress I had made for her had been swapped for 2 sizes larger. The result, Zoe's friends laughed when she tried it on, and Elaine feigned surprise. Oh, the seamstress must have measured wrong, like someone else I know. Her eyes flicked toward me, her smile razor thin. Worse, once Elaine sent a gift to my shop, a box of diet tea and flyers for a detox program. Inside was a note. Try this, Natalie. Wearing beautiful clothes is easier when you don't have to hide so much. I crumpled the note, but the feeling of violation stayed. The worst was the fake phone call. Elaine rang Zoe's art teacher pretending to be me to cancel her exhibition. When confronted, she simply shrugged. I didn't think she was ready. Her image wasn't quite right. Every time Mark tried to smooth things over, she's just concerned you're being too sensitive. I stayed silent, thinking that keeping the peace was more important. But this morning, staring at the shredded fabric and the note on the table, I knew I couldn't stay silent any longer. And I had an ace up my sleeve she knew nothing about. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to separate emotion from action. Anger would only let her win, strategy would bring her down. I opened the wooden cabinet in the corner, pulled out the bottom drawer, and retrieved a large fabric bag I had hidden carefully for nearly a year. Inside was the backup dress, emerald green, with a soft A-line cut intricate beading running down the bodice, shimmering like a lake under the moon. I had sewn it in secret during short lunch breaks and long nights after Zoe had gone to bed because part of me always believed the day would come when Elaine would try something. This dress didn't hide the body, it celebrated every curve, a direct challenge to restrictive beauty standards. I picked up the phone and called Tessa, my best friend, and the only person who knew this secret. Her voice came through warm and steady. "What's going on? You sound like you're about to blow." I told her everything. The destroyed white dress, the mocking note, the lingering scent of Elaine's perfume. On the other end, Tessa was silent for a beat, then said, "This is your moment, Nat. Show her that every act of sabotage only makes that girl shine brighter." I smiled, feeling determination spread through me. Not just Zoe. She's going to learn I'm not so easy to humiliate either. The plan formed instantly in my mind. The green dress would be the centerpiece, not just replacing the white one, but making a public statement that every effort to undermine my body and my daughter's was useless. And when Elaine realized she had been cut out of the victory story, it would be far too late for her to recover. I heard the front door open and Zoe's voice from the counter. "Mom, I'm back." The rehearsal ended earlier than planned. I froze. Zoe hadn't seen this yet. I'd wanted to shield her at least until I had a solution ready. But it was too late. She stepped into the sewing room, her long hair slightly tousled from the wind outside. Her eyes landed on the pile of shredded white fabric on the floor, then on the crumpled note on the table. Her face hardened as though every emotion had been drained in an instant. "What happened?" Her voice trembled, and I saw her grip tighten on her bag strap. I moved closer, pulling her into a hug. "Elaine did this. But don't worry. I'm ready." Zoe looked up, her eyes still wet but sharper now. "Ready?" How I pulled the fabric bag from behind the cupboard, set it on the table, and opened it. The emerald green fabric spilled out like a shimmering stream, catching the sunlight from the window. Zoe's mouth fell open as she stepped closer, fingertips brushing the beads. "Mom, it's yours," I said slowly. "I made it for this day to make sure no one could ruin your joy." Zoe smiled tightly, but her eyes glistened with both tears and pride. "She's going to lose it when she sees me in this." I nodded. "And she'll see that every attempt to hurt you only makes you shine brighter. All you need to do is stand tall on that stage and show everyone who you are." She took a deep breath, her smile widening. "I promise, Mom, and I'll say something she'll never forget." I knew this moment was the turning point, not just for graduation day, but for how Zoe would face anyone who tried to pull her down. The next morning, the Ohio sky was almost blindingly blue. I was in Zoe's room, carefully curling her hair, when the door opened and Mark peeked in. His eyes went straight to the emerald green dress hanging neatly on the closet door. His brows furrowed. "That's not the white dress you showed me last week." I kept my voice even as I pinned another curl in place. "No, that one was destroyed yesterday. You might want to ask your mother about it." Mark stepped inside, confusion plain on his face. "You mean—" "She wouldn't." I turned to look him straight in the eye through the mirror. "The dress was torn to pieces, Mark. Beads everywhere, and on the table a note with words only your mother would write. If you want, the scraps are still in my workroom. 7 months of work, gone in minutes." He stood still, hands clasped, eyes wavering. "Maybe she just—" Zoe cut in, her voice calm but firm. "It's not the first time, Dad. Remember when she swapped the size label on my dress? Or when my portfolio got paint dumped on it? Or when she called to cancel my exhibition pretending to be Mom?" Mark looked at his daughter, his face paling. He stammered, "Mom, maybe she just wanted everything to look right." That sentence was like a cold knife through the air. I felt Zoe stiffen and a heat rose in my neck. I kept my voice steady. What does look right mean? Mark. Right in your mother's eyes or right in our own dignity. Silence filled the room, broken only by the soft whir of the curling iron. Finally, Mark lowered his gaze. I don't know. I went back to my work, but I knew one thing clearly: today wasn't just Zoe's day. Today, Mark was going to see the whole truth, and he would have to choose whose side he was on. The high school courtyard that day was like a broken beehive. Laughter and chatter, the click of cameras, the mingling scent of perfume and fresh flowers, all swirled together in the hot summer air of Ohio. Zoe and I had just stepped out of the car when the sunlight caught the hem of her emerald dress, making each bead glint like tiny sparks. Heads turned. I caught a few parents whispering to each other, eyes full of both curiosity and admiration. Zoe stood tall, the corners of her lips just slightly curved, as if every murmur in the air was nothing but passing wind. And then I saw her. Elaine, in a prim pastel dress, was standing near the entrance beside George. The instant her eyes landed on Zoe's gown, her expression shifted shock, then irritation, then folding into a cold, thin smile. "What's this?" Elaine stepped forward, her voice low but loud enough for those nearby to hear. "This isn't the elegant white dress I saw. It's too form-fitting, like you made it for yourself, Natalie." I turned fully toward her, meeting her gaze, my lips curling slightly. "No, it's not the dress you saw. That one was destroyed yesterday with a key only the family has." A few heads in the crowd immediately turned toward Elaine. I saw George tilt his head, his brows drawing together. Elaine pressed her lips tight, about to say something, but I continued before she could catch her breath. "Good thing I always have a plan B." She rolled her eyes, forcing a weak smile. "It must have been an accident." I tilted my head. "Maybe. But what kind of accident leaves behind a note full of body shaming?" The words dropped into the air like a stone into a still pond. Ripples of murmurs spreading quickly around us. Elaine froze her hand, tightening around her purse strap. I could see Mark standing behind her, his eyes wide, and for the first time he didn't rush to defend his mother. The sound inside the auditorium echoed from all directions as the ceremony began. Rows of chairs were lined up neatly, stage lights beaming down, making Zoe's emerald dress shimmer as though woven from moonlight. I sat in the third row, my heart beating slow but heavy, knowing every gaze, both warm and judgmental, would be on my daughter. When Zoe's name was called, she stepped into the light. Her stride was steady, her shoulders square as if the dress were a suit of armor. I caught a few murmurs from behind. "Wow, look at her," and I saw Elaine 2 rows ahead, sitting stiffly, her jaw clenched tight. Zoe opened her notebook, but her voice carried without it. "Life doesn't always give you people who lift you up. Sometimes the very ones who should support you are the ones trying to pull you down. But strength isn't about avoiding the fall. It's about getting back up every single time, no matter who tries to kick you down again." The room seemed to hold its breath. Each sentence drove straight into what all of us and Elaine knew. I saw Mark blinking rapidly, then raising a hand to wipe at his eyes. Zoe took a deep breath, her gaze sweeping the room before landing on me. "Thank you, Mom, for teaching me to love this body, not the image someone else wants to impose on me. Today, I stand here not to fit into a mold, but to shine in my own way." Applause erupted loud, long, and swallowing the whole room. I glanced at Elaine. She didn't move, her eyes dark and narrow. Zoe's words were both a thank you and a public undeniable indictment. When the music ended and the graduation caps flew into the air, the courtyard buzzed again like a festival. I led Zoe to the parking area for photos with family and friends. Congratulations and handshakes came one after another, but I knew the real moment was still ahead. Then Elaine appeared, her thin smile like a sheet of voile hiding the storm underneath. "Zoe, that speech," was quite something she said, her tone carefully even. I didn't let her continue. From my bag, I pulled out an old leather notebook, flipping straight to the first page, my voice just loud enough for nearby ears. March 12th. Elaine spilled red paint on Zoe's portfolio the night before her exhibition. June 5th. Swapped the size label on her dress, making her friends laugh. October 14th. Sent diet tea with a note mocking my body. April 2nd this year. Called Zoe's art teacher pretending to be me to cancel her exhibition. Elaine glared. You kept those, not just kept, I said, turning a few more pages. Photos of the scenes, recorded voicemails, and I pulled from an envelope the note found yesterday. The evidence you left in my sewing room about the destroyed white dress. George, standing beside her, went still. Elaine, is it true you did all this? His voice was heavy. Mark snatched the notebook from my hands, scanning page after page, his expression shifting from shock to anger. Mom, he said, his voice louder than usual. Body shaming is not caring, and sabotaging someone's work and trust is unacceptable. He held out his hand. Give me your house key. From now on, you don't step inside without permission. Elaine glanced around, her eyes meeting the stares of several nearby parents. She went speechless, then slowly pulled the key from her purse and placed it in Mark's hand. A few days after graduation, word spread through town. Elaine posted a long statement on social media calling it a public apology and announcing she was stepping back from community activities to reflect. But everyone knew the apology wasn't out of remorse. It was because of the pressure from the dozens of witnesses that day. George called me one late afternoon. His voice was low. Natalie, I found a box in the attic. Inside were swapped size labels, hidden photos of you in the shop, and notes mocking your appearance. And a ribbon from Zoe's first exhibition torn in half. He said he was meeting with a lawyer considering divorce. When I placed the green dress back in the closet, the afternoon light catching every bead, I realized it was more than a garment. It was proof we had risen not just from a single act of sabotage, but from years of being belittled, body-shamed. Elaine had tried to snuff out our light, but in the end, she had only made it blaze brighter. Zoe walked in, wrapping her arm around my shoulder. Mom, she smiled, thank you for showing me how to face a bully with preparation, with truth, and with a beautiful dress. I smiled, knowing this wasn't just a victory for me or for Zoe. It was a reminder to anyone who's ever been put down. You don't need to change your body to deserve to shine. If this story resonated with you, leave a comment sharing your own story. Let's build a strong community against shaming and injustice. Hit like if you believe truth and preparation are the strongest weapons. Subscribe so you don't miss the next story of justice and sweet revenge. And click the next video on your screen to hear another revenge story even more shocking than this one.